Hello and welcome to our introduction to graphing data sets in particular. As of right now, there's a few things you should already know. We've already talked a bit about types of data. Remember, we have two main types of data, numerical data and categorical data. So hopefully you have a good understanding about that as of right now. Another thing that you should know already coming into this video is the right way, or conversely, the wrong way of gathering data, right? Asking good questions instead of leading or loading your questions, taking random samples instead of just letting the people come to you. All of those good methods of gathering data you should know going forward. Because now we're going to figure out what to do with the data now that you've got it. For instance, suppose we want to know how college students perform in some, let's just say, introduction to statistics. So before we work with the data, we first have to get the data. So, a couple questions here. What data should we collect? Should we ask current students how they think they're doing? Or should we ask previous students how they thought they did? Or should we ask students, both those currently enrolled or those who finished, for their grade on some specific test? I guess the same test for every student. Also, how should we collect that data? Should we post a link on, say, to our Twitter account or social media and let people fill it out as they see fit? Should we just really creepily follow up with a bunch of students from one single class, from one single institution? Or should we reach out to random stat students across the state? What will give us the best representation of all the students? Now, obviously, we can, in theory, get that data from every student ever, but in practicality, that's not happening, right? I personally, Mr. Harrell personally, am not able to get the test data from every single student in the entire state of Tennessee. That is not possible for me to do. So that's why I did not make it option D here. If that were possible, then hey, let's just do that. But failing that, of these three choices, what's the best? What's going to give us the best representative of the data we want to have, which is everybody? Now that we've got those answers, the question remains, well, what do we do with the data now that we've got it? Right? We've picked the way to get the data, we've phrased our questions, we've got our answers, we've got hundreds, maybe, or thousands even of responses. So what do we do with them now that we've got them? Well, one thing you can do is look for trends. Maybe there's some demographics you can make. Maybe there's some relationships you can make, right? Some students at some schools or under some professors do better. Maybe that's the case. And you can look for those trends. Now, that is going to fall under something called correlation. We'll get to correlation towards the end of the semester. Another thing you can look for is measurements. We'll get to that actually pretty soon in the semester, where we look for what the mean at what might be, or what the average might be, what the median grade is. We can look for not just where the center is, but also, are there a lot of students around the average, or are there very few students around the average? How are my students distributed? And lastly, the last option on this list anyway, is actually one of the first things we'll do in this course. Just take that data and graph it. That does not require a lot of number crunching. It just requires a steady hand, a little bit of patience and finesse, and usually graphing software. So we're going to look at making graphs for data that we've collected. As we'll see, it's not difficult to do, but there is some challenge in doing it right. So that's what we're going to look at in the next little bit here. I'll see you then.